Good day to all. Now, we are going to report the account of Hannah Arendt on existence philosophy. Let us start with his life background. She is one of the most well-known political philosophers of the 20th century, born in 1906 in Hanover and died in New York in 1975.
She went to Marburg University to study with Martin Heidegger. The encounter with Heidegger, with whom she had a brief but intense love affair, had a lasting influence on her thought.
She moved to Frankfurt University, where she spent one semester attending the lectures of Edmund Husserl. In the springs of 1926, she went to Heidelberg University to study with Karl Jaspers, a philosopher with whom she established a long-lasting intellectual and personal friendship.
The power and originality of her thinking was evident in works such as The Origins of Totalitarianism, The Human Condition, On Revolution and the Life of the Mind.
What is existence philosophy? It began with Schelling in his late period and with Kierkegaard, developed in Nietzsche along a great number of yet unexhausted possibilities, determine the essential part of Bergson's thought and the so-called life philosophy. The term existence indicates first nothing more than the being of man, independent of all qualities and capacities that can be psychologically investigated. Therefore, what Heidegger once rightly remarked of life philosophy, that the name was about as meaningful as the botany of plants, holds for existence philosophy, except that there is no accident that the word being is replaced by the word existence. In this terminological change, one of the fundamental problems of the modern philosophy is in fact concealed. What came after Hegel was either derivative, or it was a rebellion of the philosophers against philosophy in general, rebellion or doubt of this identity. This character is peculiar to all so-called school of modern philosophy. They all seek to re-establish the unity of thought and being. They aim at this harmony in making matters, or mind, dominant. Indifferent also whether by playing with the notion of aspects, they seek to establish a whole more Spinozatic in character. Among the derivative philosophical currents of the last 100 years, the most modern and the interesting are pragmatism and phenomenology. The modern feeling of homelessness in the world has always ended up with things torn out of their functional context. A proof of this is scarcely to be overlooked is modern literature and a good part of modern painting. However, one may interpret this homelessness sociologically or psychologically. Its philosophical basis lies in the fact that though the functional context of the world, in which also myself am involved, can always justify and explain that there are, for example, tables and chairs generally, nevertheless it can never make me grasp conceptually that this table is.
Phenomenology, above all, has exercised an influence on contemporary philosophy, which is neither accidental nor due only to its method. Husserl sought to re-establish the ancient relation between being and thought, which had guaranteed man a home in this world, by a detour through the intentional structure of consciousness. Since every act of consciousness has by its very nature an object, we can at least be certain of one thing, namely, that I have the object of my consciousness. Thereby the question of reality, altogether abstracted from the essence of things, can be bracketed. Hobsbawm's famous farewell letter to Stefan George, in which he espouses the little things against big words, since precisely in these small things the secret of reality lies hidden, is most intimately bound out with the feeling of life from which phenomenology has arisen. Husserl and Hobsbawm are equally classicists, if classicism is the attempt, through an imitation consistent to the end of the classic, founded upon man's being at home in the world, to evoke magically a home again out of the world, which has become alien. If one could still achieve something with magic, in an age whose only good is that it has forsworn all magic, then one would surely have to begin with the littlest and apparently most modest things, with homely little things, with homely words.
Phenomenology appeared to master this problem, which is much more than merely theoretical. In its description of consciousness, it grasps precisely these isolated things, torn out their functional context as the contents of arbitrary acts of consciousness, and appeared to connect this up again with man to the stream of consciousness. However, Husserl's contribution in existence philosophy is more on method, and he also freed modern philosophy. Husserl's insistence on the things themselves, which eliminates such empty speculation, and goes on the separate on the phenomenally given content of a process from its genesis, had a liberating influence in that man himself, and not the historical or natural or biological or psychological flux into which he is sucked, could once again become a theme of philosophy.
Kant's demolition of the old world and Schelling's cry for a new one. The word existence in the modern sense appears, to my knowledge, for the first time in the latter Schelling. Schelling knew exactly what he was rebelling against when over against negative philosophy. Against the philosophy of pure thought, he placed positive philosophy, which proceeds from existence, which is has the pure that. He knew that with this philosopher said goodbye to the contemplative life, knew that it is the I am, which has given the signal for the revolution of pure thought, no longer able to explain the contingency and actuality of things, is overcome by final despair. Modern philosophy begins with a dreadful collision against bare reality. The more one empties reality of all qualities, the more immediately and nakedly appears the one thing that from now on is to be the only interesting one, that iris.
This philosophy, from its start, glorifies contingency, since their reality falls directly upon man as altogether incalculable, unthinkable, and unforeseen. Hence the enumeration of the philosophical extreme situations, which means the situations in which man is driven to philosophize, such as death, guilt, fate, chance. Since in all this experiences, reality shows itself as something that cannot be evaded, cannot be resolved by thought. To this philosophy, passionately intent upon reality, is no concern that, in view of another and truer world occupation with the things of this world, distracts at one from salvation of the soul, as curiositas or dispersio. What this philosophy wishes is this world completely, which has lost precisely only its character as reality.
The unity of being and thought presuppose the pre-established coincidence of essence and existence, that, namely, everything thinkable also exists, and every existent, because it is knowable, must also be rational. This unity was destroyed by Kant, the true, if also clandestine, founder of the new philosophy, was likewise remained till the present its secret king. Kant's proof of the antimony structure of reason, and his analysis of synthetic propositions, which proves that in every proposition in which something is asserted about reality, we go beyond the concept of a given thing.
Since he clearly explained that he is concerned with the individual who wishes to have providential God, who is master of being. Schelling really intends the real man, the individual pride of everything universal. It is not the universal in man that longs after happiness, but the individual. In this astonishing directness of the individual's claim for happiness, after Kant's contempt for the ancient will to be happy, it was not at all so simple to admit it again. There lies more at all simple to admit it, and that the desperate wish to return to the security of a providence. Kant's destruction of the ancient conception of being accomplished only half the job. He destroyed the old identity of being and thought, and with it the notion of pre-established harmony between man and the world. What he did not destroy, but implicitly held on to, was the concept, equally old and intimately associated, of being as the given to whose laws man is in all cases subject. Man could suffer this notion only so long as he had in feeling of his security in being and his belonging to the world, at least